No one's going to want to jump in and try to enhance themselves unless they understand there's a risk.
As global chair of PwC, Bob Moritz has clients worldwide expecting him to have the answers to their toughest questions. What does my company need to do to survive? How do I ensure my workforce is ready? But Bob doesn't need to just figure that out for others. He has to do it for PwC's 360,000 employees across 151 countries. And he's done it. This year, the consulting firm is number 5 on LinkedIn's top companies list, a data-backed ranking of the 50 best workplaces for career growth. In a time filled with disruptions, technological, societal, economic, everyone is looking for that career haven that promises long-term growth. Here's how Bob Mortiz is developing a team that's ready for the future. Bob, thanks for joining us here today. You have made our top companies list. This is not a list that measures employee happiness or the best places to work by perks. The idea of this list is to find the companies that set people up for great careers. I'd love to understand from you how you think about PwC's need to be able to give employees this either ladder internally or ladder externally.
Yeah, it's a great question. Many people around the world see us as an auditing firm, an accounting firm, a consulting firm, and everything in between. But when you look at the demographics of our people, we're a human capital factory. And our job is to figure out a way to get the best and brightest talent around the world and then position them for success, regardless if they stay in PwC or not. And the reality is, with our demographics and our business model, more people leave PwC and contribute to society than actually stay with PwC. And we acknowledge that as an asset, not a liability. We see it as an opportunity to actually skill people up and then give them back to the larger capital markets.
All of the trends point to more companies needing to think that way. Are there lessons that you would tell other senior leaders about how to make sure your people are doing better, whether they stay with you or not?
One of the things we did at PwC was open up for everybody the opportunity to self-assess against certain capabilities. So a number of years ago, we gave them a digital IQ test, for lack of a better word, and said, hey, here's where the world's going. Here's the kind of skills you need. Why don't you self-assess yourself against those? But if you're going to do that, the second thing you need to do is give them the opportunity to upskill, give them permission to do so. You got to give them time to learn. So if you don't give them time to learn and then apply that learning, that's a problem. What we find from a retention perspective, people want to understand the strategy. They want to be part of that process, not be told what to do. So you also have to make sure middle management, senior management is willing to see the change that's coming up from the bottom. Your people will leave you faster if they're not given this opportunity. Human nature is such that if anything's forced down from the top, you're going to get some resistance. But if you allow for it to gravitate from the bottom up, we call it citizen-led, there's a lot more speed in both people's willingness to do something and try to do some things differently, skill themselves up, and then apply those learnings. And in today's day and age, unfortunately, our education systems are not doing enough to prepare our people. Therefore, our business community has to continue to think about continuing education almost as if it was a formal process.
Upskilling has been top of mind for employers everywhere. A recent PwC survey of CEOs worldwide found a stark reality. CEOs are worried their companies won't survive the next decade without a significant reinvention. They're concerned about their company's future viability, about regulatory challenges, and a skills gap among workers. I was reading your CEO survey, and the numbers there are almost shocking. 45% this year saying they don't think that their company has what it takes to make it another decade. That's up from 39% the year before. Those are pretty incredible numbers. I was also thinking about it from an employee perspective. How should employees think about this need to invest in their own skills, or how do they make sure they carve out the time, even if their company is not doing it for them?
You focused rightly so on the 45% that truly believe they won't be around in 10 years unless they change radically. Let's not forget the 55% that don't believe they need to change. And that's probably more troubling because the world's moving so fast that those 55% haven't figured out that they are going to have to change.
That's a great point. I had not thought about it that way. I was like, oh, well, these companies know what they're doing. But the truth is everyone has to be terrified about this question about whether they can survive. It's a really great point.
And that's the point when you apply it at the individual level, is teaching people and enabling them to understand the larger mega trends that are happening around the world and the implications that it has to work, type of work, and then the individual. That awareness, that awakening is very important. No one's going to want to jump in and try to enhance themselves unless they understand there's a risk. Today, everybody's starting to worry about the AI and the generative AI piece as well now in terms of, will that actually replace my job? And the reality is, if people are understanding that risk and you're actually getting them to be less stressed about that risk so they're not paralyzed by it and not sure what to do, and get that to be a two-way conversation with your current employer and themselves in terms of what can we collectively both do together so you are better equipped for that purpose. And where we went was, listen, there is a skill set gap that's going to emerge more so. We will help assess and self-assess you. We will create the opportunities to learn. And then we need you to lean in to the innovation and changing the way work gets done, because we shouldn't be guaranteeing the job you have today. We should be guaranteeing more employability going forward, no matter whether it's with us or somebody else outside. And that's the opportunity here. So there's a mindset shift that is fundamental to this.
Bob has dedicated his entire career to PwC. He joined the firm in 1985, made partner within 10 years, and worked his way up to becoming the global chairman. He's held that role for the past 8 years, the maximum tenure allowed at PwC. Are there two or three things that you feel like you have learned from all of your years at PwC, the kind of advice that you would give to someone about how to have a successful and meaningful career?
The first and foremost I'm going to say is you got to create and surround yourself with the right people. The creation of your team is so important. The second thing is, and I think this has become even more prevailing in today's world with social media and otherwise, you better develop some thick skin. Because the reality is, no matter what you choose to do, there's somebody out there that doesn't like it. When I got into my very first major leadership team role, an experienced leader came to me and said, let me be clear. Every day you're going to upset somebody. They're not going to like you. Get ready for that. And you're going to have to make the tough choices, because honestly, if you're not dealing with the tough choices and you're dealing with the easy stuff, that means your team's not doing what they need to be doing. They should be making those easier decisions. And in today's world, we know between looking at your feeds and your social media or whatever it may be, you're going to get criticism from all angles, which is actually good and informative to understand society at large. So that's a big lesson learned. One of the things I've always thought about in the creation of a team is, can they do the job today or grow into the job? Think about that apprenticeship model. If I give them this job, what are the next 3 possible jobs they can take on thereafter, because they'll be better experienced moving forward? And the last one I would say is focus in terms of what you can do, control it, but stay focused on it, because there's too many distractions in the world. And again, I'll give you an anecdotal story. I was invited to a board meeting a couple of months ago, and they asked me just to observe and then the next morning respond back. And they said, Bob, what's your feedback on our discussions? And I said, well, honestly, the first thing is you guys spent a good portion of yesterday talking about stuff you can't control. And that's time that's important to scenario plan for, but you're missing the big things you can control and do something different on. So focus, get a great team in place, and get ready for all aspects of negativity that comes, but be true to yourself, authentic to yourself, and make sure your leadership team is aligned around the execution. Those are the 3 or 4 things I would point to.
Here's what stood out to me. Nurturing talent goes beyond internal development. It's about equipping individuals for the wider economic landscape. The key lies in effectively communicating the need for change, not as a mandate, but in a way that encourages a workforce to willingly embrace that change. Generative AI is a prime example of how workers are tackling these existential challenges. Our data shows that 55% of LinkedIn members worldwide will be impacted by Gen AI, with job skills changing by 65% by 2030. Professionals are noticing and digging in. Since ChatGPT's launch, members listing AI skills have nearly doubled. If the global workforce were to adapt to every possible disruption like this, society would be much better equipped to make it through any challenge. We dive deeper into Bob's strategy for empowering talent and what he calls citizen-led strategizing in the This Is Working podcast. Meanwhile, tell us what motivates you to learn new skills. Let me know in the comments.